Oh.
The recording is in progress. And so now this, of course, is the scary part because we're like, hey, who's coming? But people are coming. Like, people is here. Who's surprised?
Have people already shown up? Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, people
see,
are here
right?
already.
So if
There
you
we go.
see anybody and you're like, hey, we're just going to give some
We're
shout
going to
outs
be
to
okay.
folks.
At least 14 people to ask questions.
Where, I mean,
We'll
we
be all
knew.
right.
We knew there were going to be people here. Friends, hi. We're just going to get started with a little friendly banter so that more of your friends can come into the room. But if you're here to celebrate the book of the season, this is the book of the season.
Wow.
It's so beautiful. And it is the book of the season. If you're here for the launch party of No Gods, No Monsters by Cadwell Turnbull, you are in the right place. We are so excited to launch this book, which I'm going to get into in a second. But first of all, hi, Cadwell.
Hey, Kim May.
Can we talk about what's behind you? Like, what? I see a whole bunch of books. I see The Lesson. We're going to talk about that. But what else is on your bookshelf? And I forgot that my name is Silver Unicorn, so I'm going to fix my name real quick while you're talking. Go.
Right. Yeah. There's, the top shelf is all of my books and anthologies and all that stuff. There's multiple copies of the novels, of course. I had a conversation with someone recently that said they hate that. They hate seeing author books on shelves, self-promotion that way. But no, it has to be. I've been waiting all my life to have that happen. So
exactly, correct.
So yes. Yeah, so all of that stuff on top is stuff that has my stuff in it or is my stuff. And then let's see, what else do we have? We have a writer's market from 2014 because why not?
Because why not?
I guess I need that.
Super relevant.
We have an arc of Jen Lyon's Ruin of Kings. We have Mongrels Back Here, Space Opera, a whole bunch of stuff. An arc of No Gods, No Monsters just hanging out by itself. Yeah.
So of the books on your shelf, and that means anywhere, because there are many books on many shelves, we know. What's the book that's gotten you through the panty?
Ooh, okay.
I know you got to pick a favorite. You got to pick a favorite, which authors hate, but we're gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, I'm gonna be real and say that I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks. That has been helping me through the things. I've been listening to Murderbot, which has been a lot of fun. It's the Martha Wells novellas. I've also been listening to her Rakshura series, which is like second world fantasy. It's really cool. Listened to The Glass Hotel recently by Emily St. John Mandel.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And it's fun. It's fun because she has an interestingly similar approach to mine. And also she has some multiverse stuff playing around in there that I find really fun. It's a little bit more literary, but it's I'm a huge fan of hers. What else have I been reading? I listened to the entirety of No Gods, No Monsters because the narrator was so fantastic, Dion Graham, and he came to me with like a bunch of really great questions, just like, so who is this and so and what do you think they sound like, and do they have an accent? And he just had the best questions, and he put his all his heart and talent into it, and it's incredible. I recommend it for people that like audiobooks.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that you should get the physical because it's so gorgeous and it needs to live on your shelves, but maybe you should also get the audiobook as well, just for the double experience.
Sure, why not? I do this all the time. I'll listen to, and that was my actual reading experience for The Glass Hotel. I listened to it and read it on my Kindle. Yeah, it was it's great to be like immersed in it. It's even better if you have a physical copy in front of you and you're listening. It's wonderful.
That's perfect. That's the perfect introduction. So I think I just want to repeat that. No Gods, No Monsters comes in a gorgeous hardcover copy that y'all need to go get at your local independent bookstore. But just to be clear, because hi, I'm Kara Wilson Cook. I am the events coordinator for the Silver Unicorn Bookstore in Acton, Massachusetts. We are launching our events season, and we're launching it with the book of the season, No Gods, No Monsters by Cadwell Turnbull. And you need to get this and put this beautiful book. Look at the foil, look at the sparkles. Oh my God, it's so gorgeous.
Catherine English did a great job, the designer.
Wow.
I'm loving
It
this
is.
pitch, by the way. You're really selling this book. I really
It's
appreciate it.
breathtaking. It's breathtaking on the inside and the out. So you need to get this at your local independent bookstore. And then also, did you know you can get audiobooks from your local independent bookstore too? Just so you know. And
I
the
do.
the
Yeah.
audiobook is awesome. So you need to get that. You need to fully immerse yourself in this world. I have to embarrass you, just so you know. I have to talk about
Okay.
the starred reviews because it's just
Okay.
too good. It's too good. So just to be clear, No Gods, No Monsters, sophomore book, big deal, 4-star reviews from all of the trades. So that's Publishers Weekly, which said that that you are, after this, that you are at the top of the field of fantasy literary fiction. Ridiculous. NPR calls this beautifully fantastical, but NPR went even further. I'm going to click over to talk about that more in a second. Library Journal was actually the one that said that you're at the top of the field of fantasy literary fiction. Publishers Weekly calls this a well-woven work with sharp social commentary, immersive prose, strong characters, delves into the complexities of injustice and identity, calls it a powerhouse of contemporary fiction. Must
Wow.
catch my breath. Booklist calls it epic, calls it what else did they call it? They called it all sorts of things. And it's built out of the shadows in the corner of a dark room. Ridiculous. All sorts of awesome people have plugged this to say that it's amazing. I want to talk about how the NPR just put out a really great review, and basically NPR says what we all know, which is you posit that if magic is real and monsters start walking around, what are we stupid humans going to do? We're going to literally do nothing. And this book delves into all the questions as to why, which we're going to get into. What I'm trying to say, y'all, if you didn't catch it, if you didn't know. Oh, and did we talk about how this was on all the anticipated lists forever?
Oh,
Like for tour? I
Kira.
know. I told you I was going to embarrass you. I told you. It's too important. This book is important.
I
This book is
appreciate
the
you.
book. It's the book of the season. Pick up this book. And I want to talk about what genre it is, because everybody's calling it fantasy. I've been calling it sci-fi, but maybe it's horror, maybe it's dark fantasy. What are you calling it, Cadwell?
I use the umbrella term. It's speculative. There's a lot of different genres in it. There is some horror elements. It's mostly fantasy. So I would say fantasy, contemporary fantasy
With a dark twist.
with a dark twist and some sciencey stuff going on in the background.
And because some of that sciencey stuff is what?
Many worlds principle. It's Hugh Everett's, theory of the multiverse. It's playing around in the background of the story.
It's all the things a good nerd loves. It's like everything in a juicy, amazing novel. And then there's so much more. Congratulations on this
Thank you.
incredible
Thank you.
achievement. This is awesome. Friends, I know I've been gushing and gushing because I should gush, because this is a launch party for an amazing book. I want to let you know, just for some housekeeping, first of all, keep putting all your love in the chat. It is available to you to do that. If you have questions for Cadwell, please put them in the Q&A. I will be facilitating Q&A kind of as we go through this conversation, but definitely toward the end of the hour. So as things come up, or if you have anything burning in the back of your mind, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. Cadwell, before I let you read a little bit, and I don't even know what you're going to read, but it's all good, so I kind of can't wait to decide to see what scene you decided to bring to us. Can you tell us a little bit just about what was the seed for this beautiful book? Like, what was the inspiration, but then where did you get started?
Okay, that is a big question. So the seed of it. So the title, the main premise of the story came from, reading a lot of urban fantasy. I read and listen to a lot of urban fantasy with my wife. We listen to Patricia Briggs. We listen to Faye Daniels. Is that right? We have a ton of our urban fantasy books of our choice, and Naomi Novik. We were just listening to Naomi Novik recently, and yeah, I recognize or realize as I was listening and reading these books that I really love the genre. You know, going back to when I was a kid, I was a huge fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I was a huge fan of Charmed. Watched, when it was on syndication, I would just tune in and watch shows. I had no idea which season it was in. I would just watch episodes of Charmed. And so, it occurred to me that I had not, done like a proper treatment. I had not like written in the genre and I was a fan. And so
Mhm.
I made the decision, to give it a try, see how it would go. And once I made that decision and I came up with, actually in conversation with my wife, the title of the book, um, you know, I started realizing that it had all of these tendrils that connected to other things I'd been thinking about for a while. And the more I thought about it, the weirder it got, is basically the idea. So what is here, what, starts it off, and the central premise is something that came to me within the last year and a half. But some of the deeper stuff, the gods underneath, the multiverse theory, Cal, that character, has been around for several years to a decade. Some of this, the cosmology of it, has been in my head for a very long time, not knowing how I would apply that cosmology, and then it just kind of just fit together in this really interesting way.
So do you do the N.K. Jemisin thing where you play with it in short story before it turns into the novel?
That is at least 50% of what I do. So I have short stories. I have a short story right now in the trunk that is I've been afraid to do anything with it because it has huge spoilers for the book, and it connects some things with other things. And so I do this all the time. There's short stories all over the place that connect to No Gods, No Monsters. Loneliness is in Your Blood, which is a short story I got published in 2018, and it was in the Best American Science Fiction for that year. Is a prequel to this. There's a character in this story that removes her skin, and that story that I wrote back then is about her mother. I guess that's a spoiler because I don't say it in the book.
Wait, is that the one? Is that the vampiric character?
Yes. There's a mother character, which is the Sukuyant are kind of, at least in my mythology, because the story is very different depending on which island. The names for this creature is different depending on which island. But in my mythology, the relationship between mother and daughter is very interesting and complicated. They're sort of descendants of each other and the same person, if that makes any sense.
Yo, yes, this is going to be such
I just told you a lot. Yeah.
I am so excited. And just to be clear, somebody posted the link to the Nightmare, the original Nightmare short story that was just referenced. Thank you.
Right.
And I'm thinking that's one of my first short stories that I've read of yours. I read the lesson before I started reading your short stories. I'm just so glad that we know that all lives in this universe.
I appreciate
because just to be
that.
clear, I was a fan before. This is just yes. Okay, so I'm going to give you a second to read your work in a second, but that was a really big thing. So your universe really it's wide. So, but can you tell fans who read your first book, does the lesson live somewhere in this, or are they two different iterations in your multiverse?
So, okay, I'll answer this by not answering it, but pointing to something. There's a very short note in the back of the book in acknowledgements that says that there are some Easter eggs for eagle-eyed readers that connect to the lesson, and that those Easter eggs are meaningful. That's all I'll say. I don't want to lean too heavy on that. I kind of want things to be, surprising.
Yes. Okay, you know what? And with that, I'm gonna let you read. I'm so excited right now. Just as a fan, I'm so excited right now. Okay, so you were going to take a moment to read an excerpt from your beautiful book. I'm going to disappear and highlight you, and then you let me know when you're ready for me to come back.
How much time do I have on this?
I mean, the whole entire hour. Basically, could you read your entire book to us, please?
I'm gonna read
take the time you need.
I'm gonna read a couple of chapters, but they're really short. The chapters in the book are really short. Okay.
They are. Yes.
All right. So this is from the section called Home, chapter 21. Right before a plane lands at Cyril E. King Airport on St. Thomas, there's a span of seconds when you can stare out the window and see only ocean below. For those seconds, it looks as though you land right in the water. And then, right as murmurs in the cabin give way to held breath, the runway appears as almost the last moment, and the plane lands. This is always my favorite part of coming home. The way the water comes up to meet you and then you've arrived. If you get the right crowd, the first timers will actually applaud. And there's this sense of pride, as if you'd performed the trick yourself, even though you had nothing to do with it. It's like saying, I almost had you, didn't I? Welcome to my home. No matter how long you've gone, it still feels like this, like home. I'm shaken awake. We're here, says the flight attendant. You're a deep sleeper. I look around at the empty cabin. I'm sorry, I say. It's no problem. We just landed. Please, enjoy your stay. I grab my carry-on from the overhead bin. As I leave the plane, the sun is so bright, I'm dazzled blind for a moment. A wave of sticky heat hits me, and with each step down from the plane, I feel heavy, as if I have ankle weights on. Cyril E. King is a small airport by most standards, but for most of my young life, it was the norm I compared other airports to. As I walk to baggage claim, it feels as if both experiences had merged, the young man and this older one, belonging and not belonging. When I arrive at the claim belt, I see that it has already stopped and my suitcase is waiting on the side for me to pick it up. Brian's standing near enough to it that it seems to be his. As I approach, he says, I figured this was yours. What you want to do? Get a drink, I say, without hesitation. For the occasion, we drive up North Side to Sibs and sit at the bar, where I ordered a passion fruit cruise and rum and cranberry. Brian gets an Angry Orchard. Rum gives me a headache, I say. He says, everything gives me a headache now, I say. Music is playing from the speakers, an old hip hop song, Big Pun still not a player. Sibs is frequented by expats, but a few locals are at the bar. The bartender passes me my drink and I take a sip. It's okay. Got to drink more for the experience anyway, being at home and wanting something local. A few sips in, the stuck in molasses feeling I've been having begins to dissipate. The light in Sibs is dim. I've always found it intimate and cozy, but when I look down at the floor and notice some of the grime, I realize there are other reasons for keeping the lights low. Sibs is as old as they come. It has existed in its current form for as long as I can remember. The quintessential Northside bar is a meeting place at the center of 3 roads that eventually will take you anywhere you need to go on island. An organ in the body of St. Thomas, a place for things to pass through before they arrive at their destination. I wanted to come here because it's out of the way. Though an organ, it is a minor one. You know what you'll do for work? Brian asks. Teach, if they'll let me. Charlotte? I laugh. God, no. They won't even let me in the gate. Brian places a hand on my shoulder, familiar and compassionate. A lot of people saw through that tough guy act you played in high school. You might find a warmer welcome than you think. I smile, but I can feel the shame of that version of myself. Brian is watching me, and it is clear he knows where my mind has gone. Drinks on me. Don't worry about it. We've drifted over the years, but Brian was there through all of it. He can probably quote back to me the words I'd said in that hospital bed, angry and bruised, while Corey watched over me. No matter what, I couldn't escape it. There are witnesses. I was thinking UVI, I say, maybe just a class to start, get my foot in. I know someone up there. You do too. Remember Greg? He teaches history or something. Want me to reach out? If it's not too much trouble. Someone taps me on the shoulder and I turn. Rob has some gray in his beard and is rounder in the face, but it is the same dude from high school. I stand up. What's going on? Me and see you in the longest, he says, as our hands shake, as our hands make contact. He brings me in for a quick half hug, our clasped hands still between us. He does the same with Brian. You I can't get rid of, he says to Brian, then back to me. Where you been? Around. Went out to school and things, you know. Yeah, a lot of IU does run off stateside, he says, swaying a little. What bring you back? Just miss home. Ain't no place like it, he says. A few beats pass and I see that his eyes are full on glazed. So when my boy Corey, me see him in a minute either. I can't find words, so I simply gape at him. Brian watches Rob as if he had sprouted wings from his neck. Rob, come on. For a brief moment, he looks confused. Then he puts his hand to his mouth. Oh shit, man, I'm sorry. I remember hearing about something, but shit, man. I had a few drinks. I don't know where my head was at. It's okay. Happened a long time ago, I say. He nods and then stands there looking horrified. Sometimes I think about Omari and it takes a minute to realize he gone too. I mean, how do you even process that shit, you know? Dread. Look at me here, still running my mouth. I hadn't realized Omari was dead, but the news doesn't surprise me. Omari got into trouble a lot in high school. I think about Corey, how many people felt the same way about him, how many people heard about him and weren't surprised. Really, I say, everything is safe. It's good seeing you. Yeah, me too. He pats me on the shoulder. Take care of yourself. He can't get out of there fast enough. All right, I'll read one more short chapter. 22. That night, I borrow Brian's Honda Civic and go to see Gina. When Karen answers the door, she stands there for a while, just staring at me. It's been a long time, she says. I've been hearing that a lot. She smiles a little. Sorry for just showing up, I say. We stand there a moment longer, looking each other over. Then Karen remembers herself. Well, she says, taking a breath, come on in. She opens the door wide and I step through. Sorry about the mess. Gina in her room. Gina, you have a good place here, I say. It's true. The apartment is small, a public housing unit, but Karen keeps it nice. We manage, she says. Gina, come out here for a second. The door opens in the back and light spills into the hall. What, mommy? She says as she stumps into the living room. I try and do my homework. She stops when she does. She stops when she sees me. This your uncle, Karen says. I know who he is, Gina says. Karen looks surprised at this, but doesn't ask any questions. Well, don't be rude. Come over here and say hello. Gina comes closer. Hello, she says, keeping her eyes on mine the whole time. I smile at her, and unconsciously I put my hands in my pockets. I just thought I should stop by, tell you I was on island. I already knew, Gina says. Karen looks to Gina and says, but how did you know that? I have my ways, Gina says. And then when her mother's expression turns sharp, she quickly adds, social media. She turns to leave and throws back a final word. Welcome home. Thanks for dropping by. Gina, her mother calls. It's all right, I say. And in that moment, I realize that I've slipped completely into the local dialect. I lean in further. I wanted to give you my number. She could reach me in case you need anything. Karen is still looking in the direction Gina went. Okay, she says. And when her attention turns back on me, she wears regret so plainly on her face, I almost reach out to pat her shoulder. She's a good kid, she says, but she can be a little strange. Reminds me of Corey. This last part comes out shaky, and it is obviously hard for her to say the words. I can see it, I say. We exchange numbers. I say I have to meet up with someone. It's entirely made up, but because of the hour, it can be interpreted only one way. Karen smiles, a bit of amusement in her eyes. You'll give her the number, I asked. Of course. Later, I get a text. This is Gina. I lied when I said how I knew you were here. I knew you were here because Daddy told me. And another text right after that. Sometimes he visits me in my dreams. Okay, I'll stop here.
Yup. I'm so grateful that we got to hear Gina's voice. I am so grateful. I am so grateful we got to hear these characters in your voice. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about the home in your voice as you are writing these characters? What does that mean to you? How have you infused that into your fiction?
Yeah, it's always easier to do it in my head. It's really, you know, when I'm reading it, it's like I have to remember how it would sound and then say it, when in my head it just comes, you know, unaltered and unfiltered. And when I'm home or when I'm talking on the phone, I was talking to my best friend from home last night. I just go into it naturally, right? And so, you know, yeah, it for me, and you know, this is the interesting thing about the book. You know, it's really important for me to write about the Virgin Islands and bring the Virgin Islands into my stories. But the book isn't primarily set in the Virgin Islands. Most of the book is set in Boston. You know, there's a piece of it that's set in North Carolina, and you know, we typically get stories where someone from a dominant culture or someone from the West is looking at some place that they would deem exotic, and they're talking about that place from that dominant culture lens. And that, you know, it's really interesting for me to like flip that and have someone from the Virgin Islands talk about the rest of the world through the Virgin Islands lens. And you know, after a long time in a book, that section is like several chapters in. That accent, that vernacular is kind of backgrounded, and then it comes forth, and it's kind of for me, it's like it's very familiar, and it's this really safe, quiet place in the middle of the book before things get loud again. And that's kind of the way that I see home, even when home is you know, gets crazy. It feels like, you know, that moment when the plane lands and you step out of the plane and you feel, you know, the only way I can describe it is this kind of very familiar spiritual sense of being in a place that is a part of you. And it's not a feeling that I feel anywhere else. And, you know, so, you know, it had to be in a book.
Yes. I love that you use that kind of that home space, and that you describe it as a quiet moment before things get loud, because I feel like that is a lot of this, the way that you've narrated this book, that there are bursts, and then there are moments where we go on to here, and then it comes back, and then there's a lot of this. Can you talk a little bit about how you approached structure? We're going to talk about narration. So I, without spoiling, which is going to suck, but like, can we just talk about your approach to that accordion?
Okay, yeah. So so the book is separated into several sections. Each of those sections kind of have their own mini arcs, but they set up larger arcs that play out later. And you know, the structure of it is, you know, lots of seeding of things that build the tension until things explode, and then the repercussions of that explosion. And so there's a lot of mini explosions that eventually build up to a larger one. And it's a structure that makes sense to me. The lesson is kind of similarly structured, and where the lesson was something that kind of came about organically. I did not know what it was going to be when I started. It started out as this one story that was based on a dream that I had, that I wanted to develop and set in the Virgin Islands, because the dream wasn't set in the Virgin Islands for some reason. And then I just got curious about other characters, you know. So like, you create all of these characters that are like part of the ensemble of that piece. And those characters became even more interesting to me than the person that was, heading that section. And so I just started exploring and exploring, and eventually it kind of folded together into something that was this larger story. And everything was pointing to this larger story. And I didn't pick up on what that larger story was until I myself started seeing signs of it. And then it became the lesson. No Gods, No Monsters was a more intentional approach to that. It was trying to create that same, structure of multiple people that matter in their own right, irrelevant to what's going on in the major plot of what's going on in the world. What they care about and what they value are important to the story, just as much as someone that would be centrally important to the plot. And I started that way with the lesson. I fell in love with it as a form and as approach to storytelling, because I feel like it represents the world more. It feels more real to me than a single protagonist taking the thread of the whole story and being centrally important, and everyone else is back up to, his main character stuff. And that's kind of what went into the structure of No Gods. I wanted each of those characters to have value by themselves, have themes that they're exploring within their own personal life in relation to what's going on with the monsters and the monsters coming out into the world, and also have some greater connection to this larger tapestry, but not in a way that decenters them, if that makes sense.
It does. So how many characters are there in this book?
Yeah. I mean, how many perspective characters? There's a ton more than the perspective characters.
Okay, that's why I had to ask that question.
Yeah, there's 7 perspective characters, which is less than the lesson. And one of the reasons why I decided that I was gonna, in my own mind, reduce the amount of characters that I was looking at one time was because I knew that there was going to be a lot going on in the book, and I wanted to, give people better footing by spending more time with, a fewer set of characters. But because I am who I am, I got excited about a bunch of characters, and I was like, well, now, this character is here. I want to explore this character and, center them for a little bit. And so, yeah, there's 6 perspective characters, and then there's a special character.
Okay. I guess we should leave the special to be special and let people buy the book.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of spoiled it by my reading. So that section that is home, and I was there's another chapter in that section that I was thinking about reading, but that is all told from an I perspective, and that I perspective is Cal, and he's important to what's happening in the book, but he's also apart from it, and that's a part of his like theme. Like he's an absence, and part of the reason why that is happening, or he exists in the story that way, is because he's kind of sleepwalking through life because of a central trauma that has happened to him and things that he feels responsible for.
Yeah. So, I mean, because you experiment a lot with that point of view and who is the narrator and how we are getting that narration. And was that in your drafting? How was that for you? Or did that all get zhuzhed out in the revision? Or did you get lost in it? Or did you have so much fun with it and it just kind of came out organically?
Yeah, that's a good question. I intended for it to be louder than it actually was. So when I was thinking about Cal, I wanted him to show up more in the story, and I wanted him to be a bit more opinionated. And as I was working on the project, it became clear that part of what he's going through is this want or need to disappear. And so he disappears into the story because he does not really feel like he's a part of anything, but the story keeps trying to pull him into it. And he's constantly kind of thrown off or surprised by that. And it shakes him loose, and it does some things, to kind of like push his character in interesting directions, or what I plan to be interesting directions over the course of the trilogy.
Yes. all of y'all who are listening to this, like when you read the book, all of that is going to excite you in a way that I got goosebumps. So let's talk about the series, because this is just book one, which just blows my mind because so much happens, right? So I mean, and talking again about the quiet portions and then the really loud portions, you know, you end, and we're not going to spoil it, but I mean, you end in a space, right? I can't believe there's 2 more books. What are we doing? Like, where is this going? What can we, is there anything that we can you, without spoiling a lot, what can we look forward to? Like, how does this get any more amazing, you know?
Okay. Okay, I'll say a few things. One thing I'll say, kind of to prepare people that have not read the book yet, that are gonna get into it and have an idea of what they think it might be and might not be what they think they're getting into. It's I'm very much interested in exploring what matters to each character. And so there's going to be more of that in the future books. There's going to be an emphasis on what's important to that person that the story is looking at. And but then all of those stories will continue to connect up into larger stories. And it's the way I have it set up right now is this beginning part takes place right as the world is finding out that monsters are real, and it's during their moment of adjustment, you know, psychological adjustment to that fact. The second book is taking place after they've sort of gotten used to it, but it's a unsteady, you know, gotten used to. There's what I would call like human supremacist groups, and they're responding to the monsters in certain ways, and this is kind of seeded in the first book. And then the third book is kind of an exploration of things being settled, but in a way that is still unsafe for, you know, the monsters, and it's about them, you know, moving towards some kind of integration where they can exist and fully and with humans, and that is, you know, the major story, the thread of what's happening with the monsters, and then everything else is kind of revelations about what's happening with there's darker powers at play, and that gets revealed gradually over the course of the series, and then there's something going on above everyone's heads, and that gets revealed gradually over the series as well.
Excellent. I want to open this up for questions in a minute. So friends who are in the audience, if you have questions, please throw them into the Q&A. I want to ask you a question. I want to go back to genre, because I think that we're reminded in this book that, you know, you have roots in horror. Like, there are some really surprising moments in this book. I'm just, there's a scene with a hand. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna say anything else. But I read it and I was like, because I don't do horror, but I had to get through the scene. So I had to read it. What is it about the darkness for you as a writer? What is it about those moments? And why don't you pan the camera away so some of us don't have to keep going? Like, what is it about that for you?
Yeah, you know, I was thinking about, you know, reading one of the horror scenes, but I figured, you know, because this is the launch, and I wanted to talk about home, I decided to, you know, read that section. But the horror showed up. It wasn't necessarily planned to be that horrific in places, and you know, and I definitely was trying not to be horrific. I was trying to lean away from the things that were really, really, you know, kind of like creepy. But one of the things I discovered as I was working on the book is that just like I love urban fantasy, and I realized that I didn't really like playing that sandbox, I also really love horror. Like, I'm a huge fan of horror film. And, you know, the more and more I worked on the project, the more and more it became clear that, you know, horror was gonna was going to show up to the party, and it was just going to be there, and I had to like make peace with that. And so I did. It was there's a section, the section that you're describing is quite horrific, but almost immediately after that I tried to like change the context and make it a little bit richer, for that character and for the things that are happening in that scene. And I kept doing that with it throughout the book. I would have a horror scene, and then it would shift and it would become something else, and it would become a really important character moment for someone. And that was fun to play with too. It definitely, in my mind, isn't a horror book, but it is infused with horror.
Yes, I would agree with that. It's not a horror book. It's definitely infused with horror. Like definitely infused, but beautifully done. I mean, it's beautifully done. I read it.
Appreciate that.
One, maybe two more questions. So there's the horror, and then we know that there is social commentary. I think that that's such like a reduced term, and it's so much more than that. I mean, you are making observations and asking questions about the world that we live in and the connections that we have and the whys, right? The whys of all of it. So it's so much deeper than social commentary. But I think that perhaps your fans might be surprised to know that, there's a philosopher in you, and that collectivism is something that's very important, at least to this world and to your characters, and therefore I'm assuming to you. Why infuse that particular thought into this space, into this universe, and what does that mean to you?
Really great question. So, the answer to that question might start in grad school. I was working on, or I was planning to work on a short story that was set in a public housing project that used cooperativism. What I didn't know at the time was cooperativism to kind of like create stability for the residents of that project. So people pooling together resources to support each other and create stability for everyone. So they were doing, they had various restaurants. They turned their kitchens into different like restaurants. They delivered food. They did ride sharing. They made clothes. They created art. They did documentary filmmaking. All of this stuff to kind of like build security for the community. And so that was the idea. And I was like, wouldn't that be really interesting and cool? And then it became, I looked it up on Google. I was looking up something, or I was doing research about this, so trying to figure out how this might look if I created it. And then I discovered that cooperatives were a thing. I had not known it was a thing. I might have known that there were grocery co-ops, but I didn't know what they were, And so just got really excited for a few years, and reading about it and thinking about it and wanting to write stories that centered cooperatives or some kind of collective economic work that is stabilizing for communities, particularly marginalized communities. And I met someone at a meetup that introduced me to someone else, and then I joined a collective that was all about cooperatives. And I just fell really deep into it. I got really interested in it, and learned a lot from the people that were like, activists within that space and understood the space in ways that I still don't, to be honest. And then I learned that there's this whole history of like Black co-ops, Black farming co-ops, Black, grocery co-ops, Black housing co-ops, and that there's this kind of secret parallel history that is happening alongside the more traditionally known co-op movement that is from people of color, and that in the current day it's being used in much the same way to kind of create stability for people that are struggling financially because of marginalization and because of all of the things that happen within capitalism. And when I was thinking about the monsters, and I was thinking about, well, they must be really unstable, or they must be really insecure. what would be the way that they would be able to support each other, or what would be the way for them to create the world they want to exist in. And that is a really important third thread of the three books, that co-op stuff, that collective work keeps growing, and parts of it keeps getting revealed. There's like buried monster collective work that's been happening over the many years, and more people, particularly people that are in the co-op movement that did not realize that monsters were there, start realizing that, oh, well, monsters have been here all along and they've been doing something, and it is something that they've been planning for a really long time for really important reasons. And it's a really important, central part of the book that kind of, I try to not make it too loud because I know that it can get a little bit, wonky. So I just let it sit in scenes and let people, talk about it in whatever way they talk about it, each character.
Yeah, it comes out really naturally. I like that you think it's wonky. It's not wonky. It comes out clearly, but it's not, I promise it's not wonky. Y'all, it's not wonky. I promise it's not wonky. Wow, this has been amazing. Now I have to share with folks who have put a lot of questions in for you. Rita wants to know, when are you going to return to Pittsburgh? I'm assuming that's an inside joke.
Oh man. I hope very soon. There's nothing on the docket yet, but I hope soon. Like if there's both a call and an opportunity, whenever, I'm down. Pittsburgh is kind of, so I don't really have a ton of, things set in Pittsburgh yet in the series, but it's one of my other, homes away from home. Like I spent a long time in, I think, 5-6 years. So like 5 years at one point and then another year at another point in Pittsburgh. In undergrad is where I met my wife. Yeah. And so, I think that's his sister, Rita. So she was one of my professors in undergrad. I was a bit of a headache, as she might remember.
Nice.
I wasn't always the best student.
Oh, but look at you now. So look at you now. That's awesome. Heather wants to know, what was your favorite monster or power to write in this book? And is it your favorite monster to read about? Spoiler alert. I know. I don't know how you're going to do this one.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of shifters in the book, and it's such a feature of urban fantasy that I was like, okay, I'll center it around shifters, particularly werewolves. There's a lot of werewolves, but there's also the were-dogs of the Antilles, the woo-woos, which are like shifters but descended from African magic, and their shifter counterpart is the African wild dog. It's not like a dog. It's a particular breed of wild dog that is separate from. It's in its own genus, if I'm correct, and it's almost extinct. And then there's also on the magical side, the woo-woos, the were-dogs of the Antilles are almost extinct. So those are really interesting. And one of the things that I thought was really cool when I was developing that kind of monster was that they're linked to hurricanes instead of the moon. And so they draw power from the hurricane. That's when they're at their strongest. That's when their other magical abilities, because they can sense magic, is at their strongest. And so the were-dogs are really fun. There's only one in the book. There's two, but there's four. What am I saying? The mom, the dad, Sandra, right, who's a POV character, and the uncle.
Yes.
You don't get a lot of screen time with the other were-dogs, but Sandra is definitely a were-dog, and she doesn't. And I plan to, do more of this in future books. She doesn't shift a lot. There's only like one scene where she shifts. So yeah, maybe the were-dogs. It changes every time I think about it. So, last time I thought about it, I was like Damsel, because Damsel has these she's a witch, but she's a particular type of witch. She has her magic system is like magical tattoos. And it's a very unique system that the other witches are more, what you might call traditional. And so I really dig her her magic tattoos, and she has this thing on her neck that turns the pages on her body. So she has like a series of spells, and on each page there's a certain set, and then she can turn it, and then there'll be more sets of magical tattoos. So she's really fun, and she's also really snarky, which I really like. Um, it's dragon. It's dragon.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, great. I'm glad that you
And I won't
said
elaborate on it. It's dragon.
I was like, we're not even gonna mention that. Like, we're not even gonna go
Yeah,
there.
it's
Okay,
dragon.
there
It's
we go.
dragon.
Of course it's dragon. Like all, yes, of course it's dragon.
Dragon is so dope.
We are gonna you do not mention, but I do want to uplift that a lot of your characters are or I'm gonna say non-binary, but I'm actually not sure that that's the best description there. But uh, uh, you respect and honor all pronouns in this book, and you do it fluidly and organically, and it's beautifully done. And so you've named gender characters, but I just want to make sure that the audience knows that existence, like how we all are, it's like being, and the spectrum of being is represented beautifully in this book. And I just want to make sure, if the audience doesn't know, well, now you know. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, I almost said, I almost talked about the tech mage, Melku, and they're a very interesting character. And, if I can, put some emphasis on this, Melku is very important in ways that have not been fully explored yet. And they're extremely powerful. Their magic is with tech. They use tech as if it's magic. And I found that really interesting because I really like science fantasy. And thinking about Star Wars, or thinking about these examples of things that are kind of science fictiony, but there's a lot of influence in magic. And I wanted a character that was used magic in that way. And Melku is great, and a lot is going on with them.
that is awesome. Oh, I can't wait. Oh, this is so good. We're running out of time. Jen wants to know, did you ever feel stuck in the writing process, and how did you keep going?
Yes, is the answer to that. How did I keep going? The strategy that I usually use is jumping around. I didn't write the story in order, despite outlining it in order. I would go to places where I felt it. Like if it was clear to me, I would try to go there, especially if I was blocked, and build out from there, and then make the connections later. And so there's a lot of my approach is all over the place, and I think that also lends to how I think about story, and why my stories are kind of so much going on, and so much interrelationships, because I'm always like tying knots is what I'm doing. And that the way that I find myself out of any blocks is by like tying around it, or like moving or adjusting my approach to something, or going somewhere else and then doing it from that angle instead of doing it straight on. And I try to keep a routine that is manageable, that I know I can complete. Like my typical goal is 250 words a day, and I try to cheat up. And that allows me, because sometimes I can get intimidated by the writing itself, and that allows me to, come to that day with confidence, to know that, okay, I can actually do this. When I used to do like 2,000 words a day, I would like have days where I would burn out, or days that I would skip because I was just so intimidated by that word count. And the thing that I would do, which was a bad idea, was I would just add on. So if I missed a day, I'd be like, well, you got to do 4,000 words the next day. And that is a recipe for disaster. So I just try to keep it very simple. And if I miss a day, I just make it up over the next week or next month or whatever. I don't do that math game.
So wise. That's really wise. Just for all the writers here, because that's a thing. That pressure is a thing. And I love cheat up for the word count. I think that that's
Mhm.
the best writing advice I've ever heard. That's amazing. I love that. And I'm going to use that tomorrow. Um, okay, so there's two more questions. Are you okay if we go a little tiny bit over
No,
8?
yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay,
This is a great night for me. I'm so happy that people came out, and I'm here to answer any questions for sure.
this is awesome. Let's talk about, so Dominique wants to know, as a Black author, did you feel any pressure to add significance or intention to your use of horror around your characters? I love this question. I wish I had thought of that question, Dominique. Yes.
That is a fantastic question. How am I going to answer that question? Wow.
Good question.
I it's interesting. I don't know if I would say I felt pressure. I think what I felt, and I don't know, this may not be true for everyone, but I do think it's true for Black people, that there's this horror tends to, when we do horror, it tends to have some rooting in the horror of the real world, because the real world is horrifying. And this is also true of other marginalized people for sure. There's a, when you see old pictures of lynchings, there's no other way to describe that than horror, right? And so when writers, particularly Black writers, write within that genre, I think that they're always pulling from, to some degree, horror in real life. It's something that is, it's just something that fits so neatly into our experience, that kind of like helplessness and searching, and the way that it can just show up, and you can be having a normal day, and then you just face something that that is hideous and deep and has not been uprooted from our culture. And it's there's a kind of like surprise, but then also, well, there you are again, and I feel like that, monsters in horror operate this way, right? It's, they're kind of, even when, and I'm, thinking about film in particular, there's a sense when the character is moving through the scene that something is right there, the music builds. And even when the monster doesn't show up, that presence is hanging in the scene. And I think that's just true of, Black experience. And so I don't know if I felt a pressure. It just felt natural to me. It just felt like these things are the same.
Yes. Yes. That was an excellent answer to that excellent question. I'm so grateful for that, Dominique. Yes. Alida, I hope I got your name right. Wants to know.
I think it's Aleda.
Aleda, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Aleda. I'm so sorry, Aleda. So speaking of co-ops, is there the possibility of having one of your works, this or an upcoming one, exist in a shared universe with other authors?
Oh, Aleda, what are you doing? Yeah, so I just recently got the immense privilege of having a story that I read by the man himself, LeVar Burton, for his podcast, LeVar Burton Reads. And I think that, I don't know, I'm sure everyone has this relationship to LeVar Burton, but I grew up on it. Like, reading Rainbow was a real thing, Roots was a real thing, I'm not I started my science fiction journey with Stargate and not Star Trek. I hope that's okay with y'all. But I watched I watched Star Trek movies with my mom. I did not realize that there were entire TV shows when I was a kid. I watched the movies, and I would see him as a character in those movies as well. And so it was kind of mind-blowing to have him read some of my work in that voice that he has, that's so iconic. And that the first story, I don't know if it was at the time, is Jump, and it's about like a couple that teleport and then it ruins their relationship. And he reads that story so well, and eventually that story becomes a part of a project that you know, Kira. It's called Many Worlds. And Shock of Birth is a story he just recently read. And that story, I would say, you know, is really, really important to that project. And, you know, basically the idea for the project is, and it's, you know, if you would allow me some time to go on about this, it is very much inspired by my interest in, you know, collective work and solidarity, and it's being applied to fiction. So, you know, I feel like artists, you know, we support each other a lot. That's within the bones of the community. But, you know, there's all of these other ways that we can support each other, and there's all these other ways we can lift each other up. And Many Worlds is this attempt to kind of use, you know, story worlds from short stories to kind of, you know, build something like you know, a multiverse. I love multiverses. Now I have like,
Really?
I have two multiverses. And it's an opportunity to kind of build this really big, elaborate thing, but, you know, where each person contributing is centered, you know, at least that's my hope, and their work is being centered, and that there's this, you know, connective narrative that, you know, brings it all together that I actually find really interesting. It's this cosmic entity that creates worlds that is sort of unthinking, and then there's all of these like metaphysical thematic things being explored there, about like, what does it mean to be a part of something that you can't communicate with but you know exists, and how does that play out, you know, with people that have the ability within, you know, this project to move between worlds. They have like a little spark of the simulacrum within them. I'm very excited about it. It actually, you know, if I can say one more thing, the launch is coming very, very soon. And the first writer is you know, a really great guy by the name of Justin C. Key. And he has this really great short story about telepaths in a world that is being jeopardized by this big cosmic event. And it's so cool. I'm just so excited about the project. And we're going to be releasing short stories every month. We have a ton of short stories, y'all. And it's we're just really excited about it.
It's gonna be good. It's gonna be so good. Okay, so we have one last question in the docket, and then we're gonna wrap up this party, which is ridiculous because it's been a really short hour, Cadwell, like super short. I kind of can't believe it. So this person, I'm assuming, I hope I'm pronouncing it. It's LaRoche, right? LaRoche is I'm assuming a school. I actually don't know. So it says, how did your time at LaRoche, I hope I pronounced it right, affect your writing career? And this is from a professional writing student at LaRoche.
Ooh, what? Thanks for coming. Yeah, LaRoche was my undergrad university. You know, at the time when I was there, it was a college, and it just recently got, you know, upgraded to university. Congratulations, awesome. LaRoche. Yeah. You know what? You know, to be honest, there are parts of this story that I started developing when I was at LaRoche. I started developing in undergrad, and you know, it was such a tight-knit community, and you know, it was a moment in my life. I was meeting a bunch of people from all over the world, and I was thinking just a lot about, you know, people and relationships to place, and you know, and also thinking about existence, because I do that sometimes when I'm like, what? There's like this really, I don't know if it's still there. There was a labyrinth, you know, very close to campus, and I would go there and I would follow the labyrinth, and I would think about, you know, the universe and stuff. I was that kind of young person. I don't know, and yeah. You know, LaRoche provided a ton of space to, you know, to kind of dip my foot in to writing and to, you know, creative writing. I got my degree in professional writing. And so I took poetry. I wrote poetry there. I started, you know, and, you know, before that, I maybe had one poem, and it was very cute. It got published. It was about my mom, but it was like, Yeah, it was a like a mom tribute poem. Um, but that was the first time like I really like dabbled in poetry. I took journalism classes, which was really great, technical writing, grant writing. And then I took creative writing classes and I wrote fiction and nonfiction. And it, you know, was such a great space. I worked at the Writer Center. Um, so I was always just doing something in that vein. And the other thing I should say is that I got my first Le Guin book recommended to me while I was at La Roche. And Le Guin is my favorite author of all time. It was a life-changing moment for me. That book was A Lot of Heaven, makes appearance in the novel. And then I went on to read The Dispossessed and some other stuff that was recommended to me by a friend at the Writer Center. And that was, yeah, I mean, in all sorts of ways, I've been influenced by that place and the great professors and, you know, saying hi to Rita again there that kind of pushed me when I needed to be pushed and kind of, you know, gave me, support and love when, I was struggling a bit. It was a new place. I was, moving there from the Virgin Islands, which is St. Thomas is very small and very different. And it was my first time away from home. And so for a while I struggled a bit, but I was really guided by the people there. It was a really supportive community.
Awesome. Ah, that's the best note, like to just like shout out home communities on your way to the end of this awesome launch. I'll give you the floor. Is there anything that you want to say to your fans? Anything that you want to say as we like celebrate this beautiful bit of work entering the world?
So I have the chat opened up on the side here, and I've been trying to catch things as they come in. I just appreciate y'all for coming, and I'm recognizing so many people from my entire history. I really appreciate y'all for coming out. And I'll say this here. This book is weird, so be prepared for that. There's a lot going on in there, and all of it is things that I love and care deeply about. And they sort of, as I was working on this project, they started to cling to each other, and I let it happen. And so there's going to be a lot. It's gonna go by really fast. But all of those characters are really important to me. I think about them all the time. They have deep histories. They have other lives, all kinds of stuff. And yeah, just give it time. I appreciate y'all, reading the book. Give it time.
Yo, that's good advice. It's weird, but in all the best ways. Like in all the best ways. Like I celebrate this book. I honor this book. It is so good. No Gods, No Monsters is available right now at an independent bookstore near you. And you have got to go pick this up. And if you order it from the Silver Unicorn, you can get a signed book plate for it, which you should totally do. So visit silverunicornbooks.com, order this book from us, and then just write in the comments that you would like a signed book plate, and then we will send it to you anywhere. And you can get it, and it'll have Cadwell's signature, which makes it even extra special, obviously. So do that. Do that. Congratulations. Like, how do you feel? How do you
Thank
how do you
you.
feel? Are you so happy?
Yeah, happy, nervous. I'm working on the second book. It's crazy. So yeah, just excited, hopeful, glad that it's out in the world and people can read it and engage with it. And I just hope y'all like it.
They will, because I did. I mean, we would just, not just me. People like this book, as you know, they're on the lists and the star reviews and the thing. People are gonna like this book. It's gonna be good. Thank you so much for an awesome, evening. Congratulations again and again. Can't wait for the second book. Can't wait for your other projects. Check out Many Worlds. Maybe it's on Cadwell's
so
Twitter
fun,
somewhere.
y'all. Really do check out Many Worlds.
Yes. We will see you again for the second book in the trilogy. Yes.
Of course. Yes, I'll be here.
Yes. Can't wait. All right, friends. Thank you so much for coming this evening. If you are living in the Massachusetts area, or even if you're not, you should know that the Silver Unicorn does events all the time. You should check out our website, silverunicornbooks.com. If you're local, we've got in-person stuff. If you're far away, we've got stuff on Zoom. So check out our events page, tune in for next time, come visit us. We can't wait to see you. Check out Cadwell on Twitter. Come see all of us again really soon. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you again and again, Cadwell. You are a genius. You're amazing. This book is awesome. Congratulations.
Appreciate you. Appreciate y'all. Thanks, everybody. I hope I caught everybody in the chat. Much love. Thank you. Thank you for showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank y'all. All right. Have a good night. Stay safe out there, everybody. Stay safe. Bye, y'all.